Mr. Erickson, you know a lot about diesel and gasoline engines. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you know this.
Well, I guess it started as a kid, taking things apart like lawnmower engines and things like that. So I learned at an early age about how engines work and the performance aspect of them.
Okay, good. And can you tell us the major differences between a diesel and a gasoline engine?
Probably the biggest difference is how they receive uh, the stroke that provides the power. On a diesel, it's done through compression, and on a gas engine, it's done through a spark.
So which one has more power, diesel or gasoline?
Uh, I'm going to have to go with diesel on that one. I'm a pretty big diesel fan.
Okay. Which engine tends to last longer, a diesel or a gasoline?
Hands down, the diesel engines last longer.
Why?
Most of it has to do with the thickness of the engine block, and it also has to do with the way that the actual fuel comes into it. The temperatures are a little bit lower with the diesel, so it doesn't have the heat stress and problems that a gasoline engine has.
So would a diesel or gasoline engine be more reliable?
In today's world, they're both pretty reliable, so that would be a difficult one to say. However, if you look at the trucking industry, which needs reliable transportation, it is still primarily a diesel operated industry.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of a diesel versus a gasoline to the environment?
Well, there's been a big cry out lately about how much pollution diesels put out, but I believe that to be more people seeing things rather than the type of fumes that get emitted from an automobile on gasoline. Um, they've tried to put pollution controls onto diesels, and all that does is choke the diesel. Doesn't allow it to operate properly. There's been canisters to trap the carbon and hydrocarbons from the diesel. Um, they're trying to make it run clean. A little injection of hydrogen, though, into that stream of air would help it burn a little bit more efficiently and get rid of the black smoke.
Why are gasoline engines more common than diesel engines?
Probably just due to the cost. That would be the biggest aspect to it. The diesel engine's a heavier engine because the block is heavier because, again, when it comes for the power stroke, it's done through compression. So as the piston comes up into the top of the cylinder head, it's under a pretty good, tremendous amount of pressure. It's under enough pressure to continue to run once it's started. It uses a glow plug, which is a heated element to help ignite the fuel. But once the fuel is ignited in it, it doesn't need that element anymore, or the spark like what happens in a gasoline engine.
Is the thickness of the block what causes the diesel engine to be more expensive?
The cost of the block is probably the biggest factor to that. Plus the transmissions, it has a little bit more torque on power than what a gasoline engine does, so it has to be a little bit heavier duty components.
Okay. And we had asked initially about the smoke in the diesel engine. What causes that smoke? I know you addressed it a little bit.
Yeah, it's the oil. The oil that is in the fuel. Diesel is a very heavy oiled fuel. Gasoline is not. If you were to take the two and put some onto your fingers, you would feel immediately the gasoline's trying to evaporate. Has a pretty pungent odor to it. But if you put some diesel onto your fingers and then rubbed it, you'd feel that it's slippery. It's just because of the oil.
Okay. And diesels are harder to start in a cold climate. Specifically, why is it that?
It has to do with the temperature that's necessary for it to continue to run. Diesel fuel will gel at negative temperatures, whereas gasoline does not. There are additives that can be put into the diesel fuel to help with that, but it's the initial cold start of a diesel in the severe climate of winter that's a little bit more difficult, and that just has to do with, you have to think about it this way, as the piston pushes up to compress the fuel and the air mixture that are inside the cylinder head, when it comes time to reach that power stroke, which is when it ignites, It takes a lot of pressure in order to do that. Colder temperatures keep that from happening.
Okay. And if you were gonna buy a truck in Houston, just no, not for any particular reason, but just to have a truck, would you recommend a diesel or a gasoline?
Depends on what you're gonna do with it. If you're planning on doing any towing, I would say go with the diesel. In either case, I would tell you to buy a 3/4 ton truck instead of a 1/2 ton. It's just a lot more truck, more heavier dutier, will last longer. And these days, the 2-wheel drive versus the 4-wheel drive, I would go with the 4-wheel drive, hands down.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.